welcome to Roadmap MBA. My name is Ashleigh King and I am a guest presenter on this show, and I'm delighted to meet you. For anyone who hasn't met me before, I'll be telling you a little bit about myself and the Roadmap MBA, and then I'll be chatting about my topic today. So my topic today is going to be some easy to use techniques to make better decisions in business. I will be talking about this a little bit from an organizational viewpoint, but as I'm a self-employed entrepreneur, I feel that I'll also be better to share my own experience that's more lived and that will hopefully be more real and helpful to people watching. So it's great to meet you. Thanks for watching the Roadmap MBA. As I mentioned, my name is Ashleigh King. I'm a guest presenter of this show. I'm also the founder and creative director of Flamingo Heights Podcast Studio, which is based in the Oosburn of Newcastle upon Tyne. I am also the host of something called the Nurture Your Zest podcast, which I've so loved to do, and I love to chat to people. So that's a little bit about me. You can access lots of my previous Roadmap MBA live streams on the Roadmap MBA channel. You can also access a lot of my content on the Nurture Your Zest YouTube channel. So it's great to meet you if you're here for the first time. So I always like to share some announcements before doing my topic. So I'd really like to just let you in on some exciting news that's happening. So at Roadmap MBA, you have the opportunity to join the Roadmap MBA team as a presenter. Now, this is so exciting. Hi, Leslie. It's really lovely to see you watching this live stream. Thank you so much for commenting, and it's really great to see you here. So if you are somebody, and you could be anywhere in the world, who is interested in business topics, who loves to learn, and who loves to talk about learning, what better thing to do than maybe look at being one of our new guest presenters. So we have the opportunity to join the team. The team is currently myself, our founder Steve Pugh, who is the founder of the Roadmap MBA, and also my colleague Efiani, or we call him Tony as well. So we would love to have you on board. What you need to do is write to the Roadmap MBA. I know my colleague Steve can pop the details in the chat. But we'd love to hear from you. It's a great opportunity to meet people all over the world and talk about business things. So it's really exciting. Hi Tony, it's lovely to see you watching. So if you haven't heard of the Roadmap MBA, I did want to tell you a bit about it. So it's real world business education. You can actually create an account online free of charge. There are different add-ons that you can take up if you like. You can also gift education if you'd like, if you're in the position to do so. But you can access a free account. We actually have an app now, which I'm so excited about, so please do check that out. But we're on a mission to help people around the world to build a better life for themselves and their families and their communities, so that we can create an accessible platform for all communities to thrive and celebrate together. So I do encourage you to check this out. There's so many great resources in here. There's worksheets, there's tips, there's ways you can learn all about business in a really easy to understand way. So I love it. So do check it out. So as I said, I like to share some news. So I'm really honoured to be part of this team, because I think it's really going places, and I'm really excited about the traction that it's developing. So I wanted to take my hat off really to my colleague Steve Pugh, the founder of Roadmap MBA, because he has guts and he has a lot of grit. He's actually putting in an application for Y Combinator. So if you don't know what Y Combinator is, it's one of the toughest accelerators to get into anywhere in the world. Only 1% of applicants actually get through their application and are able to work with the Y Combinator team to scale and grow their businesses. Now, this is an incredible tech platform that is helping to educate people in an accessible way and bring business education to real life communities. So I'm really excited about this process and the journey of watching Steve go for Y Combinator, but it is a little bit scary because it's really exciting, and I'm just so amazed by his courage. So I just wanted to say that, and just say, you know, if you're watching, if you aware of the Roadmap MBA, tell your friends about it, you know, get people excited, because it's a really great way that can help us to strengthen the application. So the Roadmap MBA is also going places globally. So we're now in, it was 42 countries. Honestly, the countries are growing by the day. Every week that I do one of these live streams, there's a new country to shout out. So just to say, we're now in Angola and also Sri Lanka, which is so exciting. So I'm just really excited to see the journey that this is going on. So do check out the new app. Welcome Sri Lanka, welcome Angola. And yeah, hopefully there'll be new cities or new places, new countries that I can shout out soon. So it's really exciting. So I like to share what I've been up to as well. So I've been chatting to some cool guests. So you can check me out on Nurture Your Zest, my YouTube channel, for updates. One of the guests I chatted to recently was Laura from High Life North. So that's Laura Kingston. She's the editor-in-chief, and she created this amazing magazine called High Life North. I really admire their sustainability and their focus on getting, you know, we doing education to the masses. They doing, you know, entertainment and chat to so many people locally, but the way that they've built up their following, I think, is really interesting for anyone in media to look at. So I love that. I loved that chat with Laura. I love her values. So I'll be looking forward to sharing more of that soon. I had a goal. So last time I spoke about goal setting and how I have a vision board, and you know, I've got so many things on my vision board, one of which was have 2 pink chairs to have Nurture Your Zest chats on. And if you see in the photo behind me, there's 2 pink chairs and I'm having a Nurture Your Zest chat. But one of my goals was to get photographed by a photographer who's very talented called Christopher Owens, and he's actually really inspiring as a creative. I love his work. I love his photo shoots. I love what he puts out. He's very fun to work with. So I had a photo shoot with him recently. I can't wait to show you the photos. I must admit, I've had various headshots and photos taken before, but my experience with him was very unique. He, you know, knew exactly how I should tilt my chin a certain way. He was very directive, and I just found it so fun. So shout out to Chris. That was a really cool experience, but I just can't believe what happens when you write your goals down. They happen. It's a magical thing. So I love that. We did do a Nurture Your Zest episode, which is all about his creative process and him. So I'll look forward to sharing that with you soon as well. And then my last announcement, which I wanted to tell you about, is I'm working on a top secret, very exciting event which will be taking place during International Women's Week. So a lot of people do events for International Women's Day, and I love that. But what I find is we often compete for the same audience, and especially locally in the northeast of England where I'm from, you could have around 7 or 8 different events that are happening on that day. So all I'm saying is I'm really, really excited to be doing an event during International Women's Week, because that way I won't be competing with other people's audience. I can go to lots of events myself. But I do have an event coming up with my special guest speaker, Elaine Parker from Safe a Date. So Elaine has a really inspiring story. I actually felt really upset when I listened to this, when I interviewed her. I got quite upset during the discussion. It's the first time I've had to create a trigger warning for any of my content. So Elaine shares a really vulnerable story of going through domestic abuse, all kinds of challenging things, from meeting a guy on a dating site and how she's now created the safest dating app in the world. So I'm really excited about this chat and sharing it with you, which I will do soon, but we will also have her as a special guest speaker for an event at my studio, Flamingo Heights. So if you're interested, please do comment, and I'll catch up on comments later and I can forward you some details, because it will be a very small, intimate gathering. So what else do I want to tell you? I think those are all the updates. So I'm just going to grab some coffee. Oh, I've still got more. I've launched something else that was on my vision list for a long time. So the Chatterbox Club. If anyone knows my story or has been following me for a little while, the Chatterbox Club is something that I used to be in when I was a kid. So I was always in detention for chatting. And I had this really, really progressive headmistress. You know, I lived in South Africa. We had quite strict education. And this headmistress, she created this club called the Chatterbox Club so that instead of being in trouble for chatting, we could utilize our skills to practice debate, practice public speaking, learn how to tell stories, how to write, how to interview. And that just brought me into this fabulous experience of loving people's stories and wanting to help them tell their stories. So last week I had the first ever Chatterbox Club in person. My colleague Joel and I have created this club where we meet as podcasters to talk about our ideas, how we can support one another. So we had around, I think it was 12 to 14 people on the one event and a smaller group of 5 on the second event. But I'm really excited to see where this goes. It's worth saying that I think sometimes we don't do things because we're too afraid. So I've wanted to create a group that could meet up around podcasting for a long time. And I just thought, well, who would do that? Who loves podcasting as much as I do? But it turns out a lot of people, and a lot of people just want to get together and share their stories. So I'm looking forward to seeing what collaborations come from there. You know, I'm hoping that people will do guest swaps. They'll, you know, help each other with editing or curating stories. Or I'm just looking forward to the collaborations that come from that. So watch this space. That's going to be happening every month. And then, hi Jess, it's lovely to see you here. Thanks so much for commenting, and thanks to everyone else who's watching. Really nice to see your comments come in. Leslie, this is live, but you can watch a replay on YouTube or Facebook. So it'd be great to see you. Whenever you want to, you can just tune in, and I occasionally watch back to check any comments where I can. So I hope you have a great time at Millen. It's a great charity, and it's really lovely to have had you watching. Thank you so much. Okay, so my colleagues at the Chatterbox Club and I were really excited. We are going to the podcast show in May. So we went last year and had the best time. So I did want to tell you about that. I've actually realized you can't really see the text on the screen because it's so white. I'll know that for next time. But the podcast show London, it's happening in the Business Design Centre in Islington. So we're actually creating a group and going down together. So if anyone would like to see us there, who's maybe from somewhere else in the country, or if you're from the Northeast and you'd like to go with us as a group, drop me an email. You can message me at ashleigh@flamingoheights.co.uk, and I'll be very happy to answer any questions about the podcast show. So it's basically a big event full of different stalls. You've got people like Spotify, Amazon there, Audible, all kinds of different sponsors. It's a really great event and we can't wait to go again. And then my last announcement was I wanted to just say that I'd have the surprise recognition that I wasn't expecting. So I've been named as one of the top 80 neurodiversity evangelists in the UK. Now, I found that really, really surprising. There are so many incredible people on this list that have been honoured and kind of recommended, and they're doing such amazing work to advocate for neurodiversity. I also think there's people missing off the list that I'd like to acknowledge, like my good friend Tumi Sater, the Black dyspraxic, who's doing incredible work to tackle research around health inequalities, class, and disability. So I really do want to, you know, recommend you check him out. But I was really honoured to be named in this list of really people who are just amazing me every day by what they're doing to raise awareness about neurodiversity. So if you don't know, I have ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and I also have complex post-traumatic stress disorder, CPTSD. So it's really quite meaningful when you've had certain challenges to be recognized as someone to follow and to, you know, and to listen to. I know that since creating content about ADHD and actually being courageous and vulnerable enough to share that, because I was so scared to. Over 30 people that I know personally have been in touch through comments or private messages and said, how did you get diagnosed? And they've actually been diagnosed. So when you share your story, you give other people the power and the help to do that themselves. So that's really, really powerful. Hi Jess, it's lovely to see you here. Thanks so much for commenting. And thanks for saying I'm an inspiration. I don't feel like that, but it's really kind of you to say that. I think you're an inspiration with what you're doing in, to promote ambitious women. So I think that's great. And thank you very much, Paul, for saying that I'm a good advocate. I think it's important when you have a story that can help people to use it and to think of the responsibility that comes with that. Sometimes I'm quite a shy person, which is why I don't post all the time, which is why I was quite surprised to be named in this list, because a lot of people who were on it are just posting every single day and all the time, and I just don't feel in some ways I'm in the same category. But it was really nice and a surprising recognition. On that topic though, we were talking about announcements, and I did want to say this is quite a topical thing to bring up, but there was a debate held in UK Parliament this week on the 6th of February, so to discuss ADHD and autism assessments. So you may or may not be aware, there's a lot of things in the press that are saying, well, isn't everyone a bit ADHD, or isn't this ridiculous? It's such a common term now, everyone's just throwing it around. And I think that really negates the lived experience of people who are struggling with this every day. It's not things like just, struggling to do different things, or being on your phone all the time, or falling into a hyper focus, or there's so many thoughts about ADHD out there, but actually there's a lot of people who are struggling with this every day. It affects our decision making, it affects the way that we approach life. The impulse control that ADHD really struggle with, for me, is one of the hardest challenges. And I think if people could get the assessments and the support they need, they'd be much better supported. Many ADHD adults are likely to take their own life because they really struggle with their challenges. So I think it's important how we use language and how we support people around us. I found it interesting in some NHS data from last year, from 2021 actually, so it's a little bit less recent, which was made available with the charity ADHD Action. They talked how over 100,000 people had been waiting for an autism assessment, and I think similar numbers for ADHD, and that some of those people were waiting, up to 7 years. So the waiting list is a really long time. I do want to say that I'm speaking from a position of privilege here, which is why I like to use my voice to talk about these issues, because for me, I was so unwell when I discovered that I had ADHD that I actually went private and invested in a private assessment, which cost me around £2,000 if you include all of the medication and the psychiatric appointments and all the things I had to do. So for people who are waiting, over 14 months, 3 years, 7 years, I do want to say, I hear you. I feel for you, because it must be so difficult waiting. And I think that it's really important that there are lots of people out there who are using their voice to uplift others. They are doing activism. Leanne Maskell from ADHD Works is a great advocate for this. And so I think it's really important that our government and our parliament are actually having these meetings. But it's worth saying that discussion wouldn't have even happened if it wasn't for the activists who are getting people to sign, getting people to kind of talk about topics. So it's really important that we honour all their work. And thanks so much, Tony and Jess. You're right. When we share our voice, it does give people the position to speak up. And ADHD is very regular for entrepreneurs. There's a huge proportion of people who are entrepreneurs who are ADHD, who, like me, feel that maybe they wouldn't fit in a normal work environment. And so maybe that's why they start their own business. It's often out of necessity. So I'm going to do this topic today, which I really want to talk about, and actually ADHD is a great pathway into that. So I want to do some easy to use techniques for making better decisions in business. And this is because, as I've mentioned, I have ADHD. I actually struggle to make decisions. It's one of the challenges of ADHD. So I love so many resources that you can use about this that will make your life easier. So I'm going to get into them in a moment, but I just wanted to just say, I think it's really exciting that our government are starting to think about these topics. Okay, so easy to use techniques for making better decisions in business. So some of the reading that I would recommend in this case is Decision Making in the Age of Urgency. It's a great paper by McKinsey and Company. That's from 2019. Untangling Your Organization's Decision Making, which is also McKinsey and Company 2017. And there's another one I'm going to mention in a minute. So I like to share those resources and reading lists because for some people who are maybe doing an ADHD or learning about business, you might want to go and explore those papers in a bit more detail. So you can go and look those up on the McKinsey and Company site and you'll get free resources, and you can actually download the white papers, which are a little bit more detailed. They'll give you lots of stats and facts. What I like about McKinsey and their papers is they're quite easy to read and they're digestible. So I feel that it's a great way to keep on top of the latest trends around a particular topic. And I think this is really important for people who are maybe not necessarily studying, but who are wanting to be better in their organizations, who want to be better leaders. These are great tools because they talk about the trends in work, the future of work, and it's really helpful. There's a lot of great research around consumer trends also, so do check them out. So in the paper Untangling Your Organization's Decision Making by McKinsey and Company, they talked how any organization can improve the speed and quality of its decisions by paying more attention to what it's deciding. I just want to read that back again because I felt really struck when I read this. So any organization can improve the speed and quality of its decisions by paying more attention to what it's deciding. So I would love to ask you, especially for anyone commenting and joining us here live today, how effective are your organization's decisions? And how effective are your organization's decision making? Do they have ways that the team or the staff can contribute their ideas? Are there sometimes too many people on a board? Are there too many emails? Do you switch off because you've heard the same presentation 100 times? How effective are your organization's decisions? So what this quote to me says, and you may have a different view, and if you do, please put it in the comments because I'd love to hear. But what it might be saying is that actually we're spending so much time making decisions or talking about the decisions, but we're not actually deciding anything. And so that can be wasting time in our organizations. So if we think of lean management theory, one of the most important things is to cut the things that are wasting time. So it's really important to consider what we're actually investing our time in and what things need to be decided. And we've got some, great feedback here about people talking about different things. I think Paul King's right. So, a fellow entrepreneur runs his own business, likes to make decisions quickly before having 100% of the facts. There's power in making a clear decision, which is actually very true because it brings me on to a topic I'm going to talk about shortly. But in the Personal MBA by Josh Kaufman, he talks about decisions. And one of the things he says is you will never have all of the information. You may have some of it, you may have part of it, but actually that waiting for a perfect time to know everything is going to be very difficult. This is why I think you always need people who are different to you and who have different viewpoints, because then together you can make a decision that's more rounded. So that can be really helpful. So what problems are our leaders facing? So when I was looking at my research for this, I looked at McKinsey reports, I looked at various articles from Entrepreneur, from Forbes, from Harvard Business Review, the New York Times, all kinds of different resources. And they all seem to bring up the same issues. So our leaders are struggling with too much data. This can also be called data paralysis, where there's just so much data, you don't know what to do. A lot of leaders are struggling with the same version or another version of the same change management strategy being implemented that maybe was already attempted 5 years ago, but it didn't quite meet its execution. Some of our leaders are struggling with confirmation bias and worry about that. What if we only decide on things that are in our values or what we agree with, but actually we fall short or we lose sight of things that could actually be really helpful for our organization? Cancel culture is a huge concern for many leaders. They worry that decisions they would have made years ago might fall, might cause them a PR scandal. So they worry about the crisis communications and the time that might be involved in fixing things. Too many meetings is another thing that our leaders are facing. They're in meetings all day, every day, trying to solve things or make decisions, but actually sometimes what we find is some of our senior leaders are in meetings that should be middle management, and sometimes our middle management need more leaders or need a key stakeholder, what we call it in lots of organizations as a project sponsor who can actually make the decision on something. Many of our leaders are struggling to motivate their staff in challenging times. We've had a global pandemic. We're going through a war with Ukraine at the moment. We know that there are fuel shortages. We know that the cost of living crisis is happening. Our staff are worried. There's a lot of things to think about. So as well as all of the things going on in their landscape, they also need to think, well, how will this affect my staff? And also, leaders worry about making the wrong decision. So that creates a lot of anxiety. It can mean that stress can be a real problem in work. People might not be sleeping. They might not be looking after themselves. Too many emails is another real issue in organizations. So this is why when you see many people looking for the next greatest productivity hack, they'll look at things and they'll think, wow, if I get ClickUp, then everything will be better for my organization. If I move to Asana, if I try Trello, if I get, Jira, all of the different tools, if I send my team on this management course or this project management tool as training, because we all want an answer. And some of those tools are really helpful because they remove a lot of that anxiety and they have clearer transparency for people. What I found really interesting in the Case for Behavioral Strategy by McKinsey was that 72% of senior executive respondents who responded to the survey shared that bad decisions were actually the norm in their organizations. Now, I have to be curious about that statement because who filled in the survey? Do we have a challenge with data where sometimes people who are very angry or feel frustrated about a particular topic might be more likely to respond to a survey so they have the opportunity to air their grievances or their opinions on a matter? I don't know, but I thought it was a really interesting stat. So if 72% of senior executive respondents, we're looking at the C-suite, the corporate level executives, your highest positions in an organization, believe that bad decisions are the norm in their organizations, what are they doing about it? And why is that not being tackled? That's really concerning to me, that in our leadership teams, in our organizational culture, we're not dealing with this. So if you are studying an MBA or studying business, or you're just generally interested in this, I highly encourage you to go and read The Case for Behavioral Strategy because it goes through so much detail around organizational culture and leadership and things that we can do to tackle some of these issues. I can see some of the comments coming in and I always try to respond if I can while people are live. So problem statements are great to identify what you really need or want to do. Thanks, Jess. You're so right. That's really true. And I think sometimes working out what is the problem and what do we want to decide on can be tricky. Tony said, some leaders worry about managing innovation and having a dynamic workforce. And I think this is the thing, we worry so much with innovation as well, that our competitor might find something out, or, you know, we limit ourselves so much. But sometimes actually that open innovation can help people to work so much faster, and it can give people the confidence to try things and have mistakes and improve. And some really interesting feedback about some experiences of working in places where people might have meetings, so they don't have to make a decision themselves. So they might meet to talk about something in case that bad decision, or they make a bad decision, could affect their reputation. You see this a lot actually when we spoke about too many emails. We have so many instances where people will copy someone into an email to make sure they protect themselves, they cover their back for audit trail. And that's very important actually. I think we shouldn't lose sight that in many organizations we need governance, we do need audit trail, we do need processes. But what's really important, and you'll find out in a minute, is actually we need to limit our decisions in some ways so that we can spend time making the right decisions and reduce any of the unnecessary noise. So I'll go through what I mean in a moment. So back to Josh Kaufman and the personal MBA, he talks about a decision is the act of committing to a specific plan of action. And he says that actually, if you're not cutting off viable options, you're not making a decision. Now, I found that quite profound because the word decision is from the Latin cut off. So if it means to cut off, you are cutting off your options. So in effect, to not make a decision is a decision in itself, which is really interesting. So I think it's really important that we think about when we're making decisions, how we address those decisions, how we will never have all of the information we need, but also something that Josh says, which I found interesting, is how you can say, well, what experience do I want? What outcome do I want? And then tailor your decision around that. So that's really cool. So I've spoken a little bit about organizations, and I feel that because I'm no longer working in an organization and I felt frustrated in an organization about decisions, that maybe it's not best for me to give tips on how to do better decisions in an organization. But if you have tips for us, please put them in the comments. But because I have my own business, I thought it would be better for me to come with some thoughts around how to make decisions in your own business. So that one of the first things is to reduce decision fatigue by habits. So when we look at decisions, there are different decisions you might need to make every day. It could be something like when you get out of bed, do you get immediately into the shower, or do you play on your phone for a while? So if you can reduce decision fatigue, and this is particularly important for people who may be neurodiverse, so that's why I'm sharing my own journey. If you can reduce any steps that are unnecessary, so that could be by doing things, the same consistent repeated tasks every single day. For instance, deciding that you will have a banana every day, or a particular breakfast. If you can reduce your decisions, you can save all of your energy for the decisions that you need to make that are really important, that could be more focused around strategic things. So by building habits step by step, it becomes a lot easier for people. I also like the idea of looking at the situation from the outside in. So if you've watched my content before, you'll know that I'm a fan of NLP. I'm an NLP master trainer. So that's neuro-linguistic programming, if you haven't heard of that before. One of the things we do in NLP is we actually sometimes put people in different chairs, and you might sit in a chair and say the problem, and then move to another chair and say it from a different person's opinion. And so what happens is when you look at a situation from outside in, or as Jess said earlier, with your problem, you look at the problem and you think, well, what is the problem statement and how do I want to fix this? This can really help people to get really clear on what the issue is and how to make the decision. I see some great comments, especially one that's made me giggle, about Zuckerberg, you know, the chief of Meta and his empire, and Facebook and Instagram and everything else he's acquired now. But Mark Zuckerberg wears the same clothes every day. Steve Jobs did the same. If you reduce your decisions, it just speeds up your time. It is important to have options and flexibility and versatility. I know, for instance, I am ADHD, so I love to have different options. I actually feel frustrated if I have too much rigid stuff around me, but at the same time I thrive when I have a routine. I thrive when I'm in an organization and there's rules and there's things to follow. So it's about what's right for you, but looking at the situation from the outside in can really help. The same thing can be helpful if you describe the issue or the decision, the problem out loud to yourself or a friend. So for those people who were chatting in the comments and the chats about, sometimes there's a lot of meetings and maybe it's to cover people's back or to protect them. I think sometimes there's a lot of meetings because people are able to verbalize their thoughts, and something special happens in a meeting room where you can share ideas and sometimes you can come out with a better solution. On the other hand, sometimes we can have meetings for meeting's sake. I also love a great tool called the thinking hats, and that's something I would recommend you looking into. And there's different types of personalities or different types of ways of being in a meeting that you could actually delegate to a client, or is it 7? Did I say 8? 7 hats. So check out the thinking hats. What you need to do is look at that and see there's different ways you can be in a meeting, but if you said to someone, I want you to be the black hat in this meeting today, they would need to come up with ways to be negative about your idea. But actually, it can mean that all of the things that could possibly go wrong with your idea can be put out in the open and you can discuss them with everyone, and that can be really, really powerful. It's a great tool, so do check it out. The other thing is, for me, when I'm making decisions, is sometimes I feel emotional. I am a female. I know that that we have different leadership styles, and there's lots of research around this with the ways that females lead and the way that men lead, masculine leadership and feminine leadership. So I'm very collaborative naturally. I love to have meetings. I love to talk about things. But I also value my time and being able to do work rather than feeling restricted. So sometimes as well, I know that people can get emotional, myself included. And I think if you are feeling emotional about a decision, sleep on it. It's really important to just take some rest. But I do encourage you to think about what Josh Kaufman said in his book, that actually the art of decision making is when we don't make a decision, that's a decision in itself. So I think that's really valuable. I found it really interesting looking at this idea that a clear deadline helps to inspire action. So there is something called Parkinson's law, which you may or may not be aware of. It's actually a concept or a theory that was around since 1955. So I found some stuff in the Economist archives if you have someone who wants to go research more. So the idea of Parkinson's law is that the amount of time we set aside for a task will be filled to fill the time available for completion. Now, I think this is a really interesting thing for someone with ADHD to talk about, because people with ADHD struggle with decisions, they struggle with procrastination, they struggle to complete tasks, but when they have a deadline, and usually it's at the last minute, they have a tremendous ability to get things done. So I know for my own dissertation, I would think that I was on board with the task, I would plan things, I would feel organized, but when things got to the last moment, I always produced the best work. I remember being in tears looking at my computer screen thinking, why can't I write? Why can't I write? And then 3 days before a deadline, I'd feel I had this sudden burst of inspiration and I'd be able to produce a brilliant paper and get a high grade for it. So I think it's interesting, this idea of Parkinson's law and the idea of deadlines. I have this graphic as well, if you can see it, which talks a little bit more about Parkinson's law. You can actually get that from Xboards if you like. And if you look at the graphic, you can see that actually our tasks fill the time that we give them. So for example, if you were going to go and post a letter, and perhaps you are an older member of the public who isn't working, and you maybe want to go and find the right card. You've maybe forgot your glasses. You need to find your glasses first. It might take you an hour to go and post a letter. If you are somebody who's a very busy business person who needs to just get it done, you might just take it straight to the post office and do it, and it might take you 3 minutes. So it just depends on your personal circumstances, what's going on for you, what your values are, what your priorities are. So many things go into the concept of time. But Parkinson's law, to me, I just find it really interesting because I'd never really thought about it before. And actually, time does get filled. And what I love to say is I'm going to be giving myself shorter deadlines for things to get things done. And also, I feel that I will be happier to just... I use the Pomodoro timer. If you haven't heard of that, it's worth doing. But you know, you can do so much in 45 minutes if you just focus your time. I love Steve saying, what would Kobe do? And it's true, Paul, as well, that, you know, I've always thrived studying at the last minute, doing slides, learning, sending assignments in at the last minute. That is just the way I process, but some people are so organized, and I really respect those people because they're so different to me. So when we look at decisions, we can limit unnecessary choice. So it's important to think as well, what is the criteria for your decision making? Are you making decisions based on costs? Are you basing them on rewards? For instance, how much you get paid? Are you more invested in the value of your working relationship or the quality of your working relationship? Are you more invested in your quality service? This was a really interesting thing that came up for me the other day in my own business. I know we really like to talk about our own journeys. And, you know, if anyone's interested in becoming a guest presenter, we're looking for guest presenters, but you're able to turn up and just talk about whatever's going on for you and whatever topic you want. And one of the things that I've been struggling with is, you know, I've been increasing my pricing and changing some things in my business to be more efficient and more productive. And one of the things I realized when chatting to some of my colleagues the other day is we had a bit of a clash on customer service versus output and time. And we had to kind of talk through that. But it was really interesting to think, well, what is the criteria for this decision? And actually, are we over-delivering in this instance? Or are we doing the right thing for our clients? So I think it's really important to think about what's important to you and your values, because they will inform how you make your decisions. It's a tool that I absolutely love because I promised you that there are techniques that I'll share with you. So top tip, you can get an editable version of this online from a website called EdrawSoft. And if you search for impact effort matrix templates, you'll get some. So there is a very colorful version like the one on the screen, or there's a more muted version if you prefer something more simple. But the idea of an impact effort matrix helps you to look at things in your life and in your business or in your world, anything you're doing day to day, where you can help to reduce your decisions and be more focused. So for instance, what are the quick wins in your life that you can do to tackle a situation, to fix something? What are the major projects you could do? What are the thankless tasks? The things that are low impact, but they take high effort for you. What are the fill-in jobs that you can do? One of the things that I've started to do recently is actually delegate better. Things that maybe I'm doing, but I don't need to be doing, like shredding paperwork or filing or sorting through things or going to, get keys cut when actually I can delegate those tasks. So to me, this is a really helpful tool, and I love to just do a matrix and draw it. And there's so many different time management techniques that you can look at. But I love the impact effort matrix, and I would highly recommend creating your own version of it. I wanted to share something that my friend Denise taught me. In fact, Tony Fiani, our fellow presenter, was in the same room when we looked at this, because we had a great strategy day and we did this together. But when I used to look at projects, so projects in my business that I would be taking on to deliver, I used to go, okay, great, we'll do this project and then I'll just split this money with everybody and it will be fine. And what I didn't realize is the time and the effort and the contribution wasn't always fair or appropriate. So I wanted to give and to collaborate, but I wasn't always honoring myself or my business in a way that would make my business last long term. So a big shout out to Ifeanyi and to Denise for being such supportive friends and having some really clear chats with me about where I could improve things. But when I looked at this concept of a matrix to help me, so if you have, for instance, project A, project B, project C, when you're looking at your project, you could have so many different project factors, but it could be something like the location, the time, the reward, the enjoyment, and the opportunity cost. So I actually used this myself the other day. So I was contacted by a lovely school that wanted me to go and do some podcast training for them. And it was a 6-week program, and they wanted me to teach for 90 minutes. And I was so excited, but when I looked at it, it was a 3-hour round trip to get there. And it just didn't make sense because I would be taking so much time away from my business, from something I love, but actually the reward didn't match. I would enjoy the work, so I would tick highly on the enjoyment factor. But to get there would be so difficult, and the time involved, because when I do public speaking or when I talk, I have to actually prepare the material, I have to practice my slides, I have to feel ready to do that delivery. And so I need to factor in time for the preparation. So for 6 weeks, you're looking at 6 full days of time, even for a 90-minute slot, in terms of travel and preparation. And yes, there would be the enjoyment, but the opportunity cost of what I could be doing in my business, I could be building passive income streams, I could be running events, I could be training, I could be doing so many things, I could be helping people to produce their podcasts. So I actually said no to that opportunity. And that was one of the first times for me where I felt, wow, this was the right decision for me, and I'm really proud of how I did that. But in the past, I wouldn't have been able to do that. I would have just gone, oh great, there's this fabulous opportunity, I must say yes. And what I've realized is actually we are given choices and options in our businesses, in our life. So everything that comes to you doesn't mean you have to do it, but the act of not tackling them means that we're not actually making decisions. So by looking at something and going, well, does this match my values? Is this the strategic way that I want to run my business? Is this what I want to do? It can be really helpful. So I would really encourage you to look at making a matrix. I know I've got a family member who's recently relocated and they weren't sure where they wanted to live or what they should do or who they should live with or what jobs they wanted to go for. And they did a similar thing and they found it really helpful. So it can sometimes just help to get all of your thoughts clear on what matters most to you. I do want to say that with decisions, as I mentioned, I love to collaborate. I think it's so helpful, but collaboration is helpful until someone has to make a final decision. We do need to take a decision at some point. You can't always please everyone. We see this with our politicians, you know, with our business leaders. There will always be decisions that might upset somebody. And this is why I really encourage you, whether you're in an organization, whether you're in your own business, whether you're a mom or a family member trying to organize things in your life, it is important to make a decision, but weigh up what other people think or the advice you get. I think it's important as well just to think that when we talk about our values, when we have clear values about what's important to us, it makes our decisions so much easier. So how do I personally systemize my decisions to make it easier for me? So as I mentioned, I have ADHD. Sometimes it can be really tricky to stay on track. So I like to use habits. So I use a habit tracker. I've mentioned it before. It's called Fabulous. It's a tool that I absolutely love. And it just helps me to reduce all of the decisions around what do I need to do today? You know, what tasks do I need to do to stay on top of my workload and my home life? I use systems like Asana as a project management tool. It's free. It means that I can keep on top of things rather than trying to remember everything in my head and forgetting about people. Keeping a note of things, so actually keeping the right notes with the right things to help me if I need to make a decision quickly. I can quickly scan my notes and see, okay, I feel confident that I've got enough information here to make a decision based on what I already know. And then also evaluating and reflecting. So I'm really a huge fan of the agile or sprint methodology. I know that Tony Effiani's talked about that himself. And I would say that evaluation is such a big part of agile project management, because you end your sprint and then you look at what went well, what didn't go well, what could we improve on. But it means that you're able to clarify the areas that could be better and what you can do to improve on them. And what to do if you're not performing. As I mentioned, tiny micro habits can help you get back on track. So I do love the fabulous tool, Habit Tracker. I would always recommend it if you want to get something to help you. I think it's important as well to learn, to upskill, to help yourself feel in a better place to make decisions. So I realized the other day that there's a bit of a knowledge gap for me in a particular marketing area in my business. So I love marketing. I've done digital marketing for a long time, but marketing is such a big concept. There's social work, nearly said social work. There is social media, there is the email marketing. There's so many different facets of marketing. And what I realized is actually I would like to look more at SEO and search engine optimization. So that's an area I'm trying to upskill myself on, because if I learn, then I'll be able to make better decisions. So sometimes we need to have the information to help us as well. And if it doesn't work, if you do mess up and you make the wrong decision, do give yourself grace, do adjust, give yourself time to reflect and fix it. I think it's important that we're honest when things haven't gone so well and try again. So that's all from me for today. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks so much to everyone who's commented and joined us live. Really appreciate you watching and joining in on the conversation. It's great having your support. And I guest present for Roadmap MBA every 2 weeks. So I should see you in a couple of Tuesdays. If you are interested in Roadmap MBA, go and check us out. You can get a free account and we'd love to hear what you think. Thank you so much for your time.